Hi, this is Alicia Bowling with Creative Laughter TV Beyond Logic podcast. Today our guest is a psychic medium and only 26 years old. I have to tell you, this is one of the truly most compassionate and caring young men I have ever met, and it is my pleasure to welcome Joshua John to the show. Hi, Joshua.
Hi, Alicia. How are you?
I'm good. I'm really happy to have you. I get excited when I get to interview millennial psychics because it's such a different kind of field than the older ones. And your story actually was quite tragic in a way, but it also kind of molded to who you are. And I really find you very interesting. I'm excited for people to hear your story. So if you'd like to tell everyone how this all started for you, I'd really appreciate that.
Well, first off, thank you for, having me on and being able to share my story. And before I begin, the way that I always tell people about who I am or what I've experienced is that every single person on this planet has a different pain tolerance. And whether that's physical or emotional, I always say that my story isn't worse nor greater than anybody else's. It's just mine. And I grew up in foster care for 17 years. And within that, I went through about 33 different foster homes. Included in the foster homes and the abuse, I've had 3 eye surgeries, 3 knee surgeries, a broken jaw, anywhere from being molested, raped multiple times. For about 2 years, I was eating out of the garbage for most of my meals. And this was while being in the care of the state. I never, ever, my whole entire life, never had a clean pair of shoes, never had a jacket or a coat. And like growing up for me, I never thought about friends. I never thought about the latest item or the latest toy. Every single day of my life was about survival. I had to wake up every morning wondering, where am I going to sleep? Where am I going to get my food from? And as a 5-year-old, as a 6-year-old, as a 10-year-old, the idea of never having a home, yet always watching other people, whether it's on TV, at school, you always see people in love and happy and with a family. And going through so many homes, you can't help but to think that there's something wrong with you, with myself. I went into my last foster home at 17 years old. At this time, I was able to call someone mom. I had a sister there, and which I've never been able to do my whole entire life was call someone mom. And I legally changed my last name, so we can be a family. And I was working and going to school. And when I came home one day, she was like, "Hey, I know you're turning 18. You're going to age out. Do you mind asking the state to stay in the system after 18? Because I don't have a job and I would need your checks to support the family." And I said, "Oh, absolutely. That's what we do for one another. We, as a family, we do things that we may not like in order to better, the unit, the family unit." And so I said, of course. The state granted me my wish of being in the foster care system longer. And I was 19 and I came home one day and everything that I owned was on the stoop of the stairs in black plastic bags. She didn't answer the door. All she said was, "I got a good job and I don't need your checks anymore. Good luck." And being 19 years old, going through 33 different families, realizing that there is nowhere, absolutely no one to go to, was terrifying. And for me,
I don't think people realize that. I'm sorry for interrupting for a second, because I am very aware of that. A friend of mine works for an agency, and, when they're 18, they put them out on the street. Like they have no training, no skills of saving anything. And then they're just expected to survive. It's a very frightening thing. I can't even imagine what that was like for you.
I mean, it literally, for me, growing up, a lot of kids, of course, they learn everything in school, and they focus on that. For me, all of my education, and this is a legitimate, street smarts, that was something I was really, really good at. And I look at, being a psychic medium even before, I grew up not knowing what a psychic was, not knowing what a medium was. But later on in my life, I was able to look back and go, I had to read people. I had to be able to adjust in multiple different situations, being able to read people's energies or people's, the way that they acted, not so much as studying them, but I had to feel where I was going before I actually got there, because I was A, terrified, and B, not sure what I was walking into. And so at 19, I moved in with my partner at the time. Luckily, we were able to get a place in short notice. And I kept praying. I kept praying, the one thing that was consistent in my life through foster care was religion, faith, and so to speak, God. And so I kept praying, and I kept saying, I want to know what it feels like to forgive. I want to know what it feels like, where I can wake up in the morning and not be scared, that I'm not screaming because I'm having nightmares, or if I'm shopping and someone reaches up to grab something on the top shelf, I don't flinch. That it's always a fear that I was going to be hurt or abused or taken advantage of. And the mental the mental abuse that you go through in foster care, always feeling like you're not worth anything, it gets to you after a while. And so for me, I wanted to know what it felt like not to be angry, not to be felt like I was the victim. And I kept praying for about asking God to teach me what true forgiveness was. And this is kind of where the woo-woo stuff actually starts happening. I kept praying. Mind you, I was a full-time student in college. I was working with kids. And I kept praying. And all of a sudden my body became extremely sick, and I was in and out of the hospital. They were doing different tests on my body and figuring out why it was shutting down or that it was acting out of norm. And I remember it was about the third week of this happening where I was in the hospital. They checked me in for overnight. And I remember waking up, and in the Bible, it says that God can come in a blink of an eye. And I believe that for this very reason is I remember waking up out of a dead sleep at 3 o'clock, maybe 4 o'clock in the morning. And it was as if for a second, there was like a little glow, whether it be a spirit guide, an angel, a loved one. I had no idea at the moment, but it was a little flash, and a flash that was not like a security camera or a motion detector. It was an actual white flash, and it was in the corner of my room. And for one moment, Alicia, like I actually felt as though nothing ever happened to me, in a feeling, in a way where I was never abused, I was never neglected, I was never starved, I was never forgotten. In that one moment, it was just serenity, it was peace. And I chased it. Later on, I chased it through meditation. I chased it through float tanks, the little salt float tanks, which I don't advise. Those are pretty darn scary, at least for me. But I chased that feeling.
They are kind of scary when you think about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're getting stuck in those things.
Yeah,
it's really funny. How do you forgive? Because I don't know, maybe I'm a biatch, I don't know. But you know what? When those kind of horrible things happen, it's really kind of hard to brush it off and say, well, thanks. Thanks for the memories. You know what I mean? It's really hard. And it's amazing that at such a young age that you can find this compassion and that you can, learn how to separate this now and forgive.
Well, it truly was, it wasn't easy at all. After that moment of serenity, I woke up, went back to sleep. And I woke up with the same idea of forgiveness, with the same thought of forgiveness. And I woke up and realized that everything that they did does not define me. And one of the things that I've always done my whole entire life is I've identified as a foster child, and that was the identity that I had. And as a foster child, you live every stigma and statistic while you're in the system. And one of the things that I've taught, because I finished school, became a social worker, and one of the things that I learned to teach kids and other people is that our past does not define us. It is our actions in the present that define our future and define who we are. And I had to sit down and go, the more that I look at what they've done to me rather than what can I do, the more that I will always be that victim. And so I had to look at it and go, it's not their fault. The way that they chose to live their life is their decision. It's not mine. And that's when everything really changed.
And is that when your partner came in? Like, when was the time lapse from the time?
So actually, yeah. So after, so I'll tell the woo-woo part, and then I'll get to my husband. But so the woo-woo part is where that after that day in the hospital, I went to work because it was the very first thing I thought about was my kids. I worked with at a facility that had 250 kids that would come in a day. It was an after school place, and I knew every single kid in that building, first and last name. And I went to work and I sat down next to my coworker and I looked at her and I said, "Oh, I'm so sorry to hear about your grandmother. How are you doing?" And she looks at me kind of strange and she's like, "Joshua, you've been gone for 3 weeks. She passed 2.5 weeks ago." And I was like, "Oh, that's strange. But I remember you talking about it and you showed me your wedding photo album and hers and how you got married where she did, to honor her." And she's crying at this moment. She's like, "Joshua, I've never told anyone here at work that she's passed, let alone I've never shown anyone those photo albums." And so at first, it was a shock. I was like, she said, "Do you know what you're doing?" And I go, "Yes, we're talking about our conversation we had." And she was like, "No, you're channeling her." And, I knew what channeling was. It's in the Bible. Growing up in church, we've heard about it. But this kept happening where I would speak to people or people that I didn't really even know through drive-thrus, paying my phone bill, Buffalo Wild Wings. I would approach people or say things to people that I felt was as if we lived it or that I just knew it. And it kept happening. So I went, I tried to understand what this truly was. And I prayed to God. I said, if this is something that's supposed to help people or heal people, I need guidance. And that's when I saw Teresa Caputo, the Longer Than Medium, on TV. And I was actually sitting with my friend at the time, and I go, "Hey, that's what I'm doing." And she looks at me and she goes, "No, what she's doing is real. What you're doing is creepy." And it's because she was with me all the time when I was doing this approach to people, and I didn't know what it was. I reached out to Pat Longo, who's Teresa Caputo's mentor, and I was lucky enough to have been mentored a little bit through Pat Longo, and then Lisa Williams, another world-renowned medium, took a chance. And I didn't have the money for her course. I didn't have the money to fly out to Chicago. I was 19 years old, almost 20. I didn't have that money. I was working as well. And so she actually flew me to Chicago, and I didn't really have to pay for much. She took a chance, and she, for a whole week, she certified me or tested me, and then later on certified me as a medium and a platform medium. I came back to Oregon after that and was working professionally as a medium, and then working at a group home, helping take care of managing individuals with disabilities. And at this time, I was moving. I was working and doing mediumship, and I broke off the relationship that I had. And maybe not soon after, I met this guy, and I started talking to him, and I just told him my first name. I didn't tell him much about me, but I found myself falling for him in the way that I was just like, wow, I like this. But then I just stepped back. I was like, wait, this is way too soon. Like, I'm just not going to respond. Maybe a week later, he messages me on my professional Medium page, and I sat there, and he just says, "Hey, Joshua, it's me. We talked, blah, 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 blah. I just wanted to reach out to you." And at the moment I thought about it, I kind of laughed. I was like, well, he already knows I talk to dead people, so that's out of the way. And he still wants to talk.
Right, exactly.
So I took that as a green light, and we met up for coffee. September of last year in 2017, him and I got married, and I grew up not having a family at all. And I looked out into the audience, and there was over 120 people at our wedding. It was a barn rustic wedding. Him and I did absolutely everything by ourselves. We had some help with the flowers. His family came the day of, and help set up decorations. And it was absolutely beautiful, this wedding. But one thing that I kept secret, almost, not secret, but separate, I should say, is my work of mediumship. I never, I never let him listen to a radio show. I never let him come to a group reading until about maybe a year ago. And he came to I had 2 sold out events night after night, and he attended both of them. And I can remember the exact moment and the exact stories. I was doing a group reading, and I came to this woman, her family, and I looked at her and I said, "Oh, there's a young male that steps forward and takes responsibility for his passing. Would you understand this?" And the family said yes, with tears in their eyes. And I said, "It's odd. They're showing me a choo-choo train, or he's showing me a choo-choo train going around like a Christmas tree." And he says, "I'm sorry." And I go, "Would you understand this?" And they stood up and they spoke, and they said he committed suicide on a railroad track. And it was, and this was the rest of the night, the amount of validation that comes through in a reading, whether it's me or other mediums, is extremely important. The evidence. And the next night, something very similar. I went to a daughter and a mother, and I go, "Oh, your father, your husband stepping forward." And I looked at the daughter and I said, "Oh, your dad's talking about a heart-shaped heirloom, or a heart-shaped thing, saying, 'Oh, you carry it around with you. Thank you.'" And she reaches into her bag and she pulls out the heart-shaped ashes that she carries with her everywhere.
Oh, wow.
And I look at the wife and I go, "Your husband just stepped up and said, 'Thank you for keeping my belt. This was an awesome belt. Thank you.'" And she stands up, flips up her shirt, and she was wearing the belt of his that he was talking about. And driving home, my husband looks at me and goes, "There's no way you could have guessed any of those things. How can you be so right on? You can't just guess those things. You can't just make them up." And it dumbfounded him. And he was so inspired that he was completely invested in what I do now. He listens to every radio show. He listens to every, everything that he can be a part of. He's there. And he even went to the level of orchestrating a group reading. He works as a nurse at a hospital, and he orchestrated a group reading with his coworkers, and his coworkers came. Mind you, I knew nothing about them, as I prefer. No names, nothing. And it was a night of, after a year, they're still talking about it. They're still, reminiscing and, saying thank you to him and myself. And I always tell people that whenever I hear a thank you, it's never to me. It's always to their loved ones. And I don't think any medium should ever take the thank you personal. I don't think that they should ever walk away going, "Yeah, I did a great job." It's always, acknowledgement that it's beyond us. We are only the person relaying the message. And we as mediums should feel privileged that we are able to give that message to someone. And my husband is something I always kind of joke around that every boy, girl wishes sometimes for that Disney fairy tale.
Right.
I think I wished a little too hard though, because he always sings Disney music.
Oh my God, that's funny.
And sometimes I just wish he wouldn't.
That's so funny. That's cute. Well, one of the things with these different kind of lives people have, I mean, yours is truly tragic, and other people have had truly tragic stories as well. But they say that our souls choose these lives for whatever reason, whether we're very heavy, we're very thin, that's our life, that's our story, and we choose it for whatever lessons. Do you believe that? And if you do, why do you feel your little souls chose such a hard life?
Well, I think that we do plan our life. We plan a start and an end. And I believe that there are certain milestones within our life's path, from start to end, that there are certain milestones that we hit and that we do plan, but there's a lot of in between that if we were to plan out our whole life, then there's really nothing for us to learn. So I believe that there are certain milestones that we do plan, and we are given a free choice to choose whichever path leads us to that point. And that way we are able to learn. We have the choice to make A, B, or C. And, we choose a path and we are able to walk down it. And that's how we learn. But yes, I do agree that we choose our life path to a certain extent. And then from then on, we are able to learn and experience and make, wrongs and rights. But that's what life is about making those wrong moments. That way we can learn from them.
Do you feel the same thing goes with, color or religion? Do you feel like we also choose those type of things? Because obviously some religions, some ethnicities have harder life paths than others. So is that part of that contract that we choose?
I believe that our surroundings is what we get to choose sometimes. And with the race, I love that question, that thought behind, like, do we get to choose what race we are? And I think about all those who came before us, whether it's African Americans, everyone around the world, those who went through struggles, it was for a purpose. And I believe that everyone chooses their race because it changes history. It's made such a big impact. And so I believe that, as far as religion goes, I think, or faith, spirituality, I think that that's a choice. It's a choice to find where our happiness is. And for our human minds, we sometimes look to religion or faith to better, understand what God is, or to give a picture or a feeling associated with religion. And so for our minds, our understanding, we go into a faith or a religion. And so I think that we are able to choose, what brings us happiness, how we find our path. And, there are extremists and there are people who choose to go down this path. But again, there are our surroundings that shape us as well. And so I believe that we have the choice to be angry, to be racist, unfortunately, because it is a choice. It's not always your surroundings, because someone can choose not to go into a situation where they can learn more and experience other backgrounds, and that's their choice. And that might be a lesson that they will have to learn. Is on the other side, they will see the wrongs that they've made.
Right.
But as far as religion goes, and faith and spirituality, I do believe that is a choice for us to make.
So why do you feel that Spirit has this need to contact us and give us messages in the same way that we feel this need to always stay in contact with them?
Yeah, I mean, if we think about it, we thrive for a love connection. We thrive for intimacy. And whether we're angry or upset, the idea of connecting with our loved one sometimes offers us a way of healing, because the way that we look at a loved one communicating with us is because on the other side, there is no race. There is no language barrier. There are the amount of emotion that we create here in the physical world is kind of scary to think about, the anger that we've created, because there's no anger on the other side. And so all the emotions, the fear that we have, the hurt that we have, our loved ones see that from the other side, and they see how much happier we can be or could be. So if a client or someone on the physical world who lost their loved one, whether it was through tragedy, an easy passing, or that they had unfinished business, if there was somebody who was abused or neglected and their loved one passed on, they may need that moment with a medium or that moment with a psychic in better understanding who that individual truly is.
And what about the people who somebody's passed away 20 years ago, but they still feel this need to communicate with them? What is that about, that they need this so much after such a long time?
It's about that healing. If we look at 20 years, how much callous has built over that pain, that hurt. But even if, let's just say that it has been 20 years and they didn't have a difficult, life. They loved their mom or their dad or their brother, the sister. They loved them, but they just want that connection. And it's because we strive for that and we miss it. And so sometimes just hearing that, yes, I'm okay. Yes, I'm checking in on you. I see these life things that you've experienced your whole life. It gives us that sense of relief. And sometimes that's truly what people are seeking, is just knowing that our loved ones are there.
Right. Well, you're only 26 years old. You're so young, but you're so mature. It's crazy when I talk to you. I'm just like, wow. The maturity level, it's amazing. But, I have the older psychics who tell me that this is, this can be quite a burden, this gift that you're given. Some of them don't sleep well. It's hard to get grounded. People are constantly asking you questions and wanting free readings. And, your head just might want to go. I mean, how is that for you at 26?
Well, at 26, the one thing that I do have at this moment, and I don't think that people take enough time, and I say people as millennials that are coming into this work, I don't think that they understand how much the older people have done for us. And as a gay man, I think as many older LGBTQ people as I can, because a lot of them have done the marches. A lot of them have done the work for us to be loved and share our love and express it. And same thing with mediumship. There are a lot of older people who have put their necks out there, their careers out there, their names. And so for any person who's listening, whether you're older or coming into this, thank you. Thank you for having that courage for us to do this work. But as a 26-year-old, I have the energy, but B, yes, it's true. It sometimes, I wouldn't say it's a burden, but it definitely imprints your life. And when you are having a client sit across from you and their 2-year-old grandson was drowned by another parent or relative, and that grandmother is sitting across from you, and they are literally waiting and listening to every word you say, that is something that is not light. You have images and pictures of people doing suicide or murders or murder-suicides, and that when you communicate with children who've been murdered, or those emotions is nothing light. It's sad. And so for any person who walks away smiling at the end of a reading, is lucky. But sometimes it's, and I think communicating with those who have passed over, they tend to make the client smile and laugh. And that's the part of healing. But as a 26-year-old, the one thing that I have found is for me to be able to separate myself. And it's not to be numb. I don't think mediumship should ever be numb. I think that we have to, extract ourselves and let, the pure channel kind of come through for us. But I have to run. I have to work out. I have to study. And one of the things that I do is, I work as a social worker. I work as a medium, but I'm also in school as well. And I think for me, the idea of keeping myself busy allows my brain to focus on something else, not just mediumship. And I think as far as like sleeping goes, I drink a butt ton of caffeine. Like caffeine and me are like best friends. And every person will tell you that whenever I do a group reading, because I like to hold my group readings no more than 25. And within 2.5 hours, I'll read all 25 people. It's tiring. It's a lot of work, but I love it. And I love doing those types of readings. And I literally tell people, by the way, I've had a lot of caffeine. I talk very fast. But what I love the most about it is that you get to see, people who've come who are either skeptical, who are believers, who are unsure. And there's a lot of people, who find their faith, who find comfort, or they go back into what they've known, whether it's religion, spirituality, faith. Sometimes it's reinstilled in them and very healing. But as far for me, I make sure that I have time for myself.
That's important. Well, before we sign off, I want you to tell everybody about your wonderful, thing that you do for people. This is so cool. So tell them about the Meals That Heal and how, if anyone wants to get involved with that, how they can help you.
So there's actually two things that we do here in the local area. One of them is I work with two other mediums here in the Portland area, and we hold 2 shows a month, audience readings, and the tickets are anywhere from $10 to $15. And at the end of the calendar year, all the proceeds that do come in, that's every single cent, gets donated to a nonprofit. And I've actually created my own charity called Operation Meals That Heal. And this is something that I started when I was 19, when I aged out of foster care. I thought about, and I always cry at this story, but I remember being around 15 years old. I think it was 12 actually. I was about 12 years old. The foster mom, they went to a Christmas family gathering, and I was not included. She dropped me off in downtown Portland and said, be home by 10 p.m. Mind you, I had no money. I had no jacket. I had holes in my shoes. I was wandering around downtown, going from store to shop, trying to stay warm. And I remember walking around thinking how lonely I was, how there was nobody on the streets but those living on the streets. And I remember this lady walking up to me, and I always cry, but she looked at me, she smiled, and she said, "Are you hungry?" And I said, "Yes." She handed me a brown paper bag that had a sandwich, I'm going to cry, granola bar, a pair of gloves, and a note that said, "Don't give up, it gets better." And I always tried to, when I came out of foster care, I always thought, what was the one thing that truly brought me happiness? And it was that moment. And so I tried to recreate that for other people. And to this day, we've given over 1,900 meals to those living on the streets. And we have last year, 4 days before an ice storm happened here in Portland, we gave over 190 jackets away. Every single person got gloves, hats, socks, food. We did it 3 months later, focused on feminine hygiene products. Every single person, we did 170 meals, I think. Every person got conditioner, shampoo, toothbrush, toothpaste. Those who needed it got first aid kits, socks, a rice, bean, cheese burrito, resource center pamphlet. And the women got, what they needed as well. And we came home with absolutely nothing. And this is the one thing that truly brings a part of my soul back and heals, is knowing that this person, whoever's receiving it, whether they say thank you or not, is going to benefit from it. There's a Facebook page, Operation Meals That Heal. If you feel inclined to help, whether that's you send supplies or donate, there's a Facebook page that has a donation button and a message link as well. And I would love to always personally say thank you as well to anybody that even has a thought about helping.
Well, Joshua, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show. You are truly a gift to this world, without a doubt. And if you want to book a reading with Joshua or learn more about him, go to his website, www.askjj.org.com. And also, don't forget to go on our website and check out our group sessions. Hopefully, Joshua will join us on that. And remember, you create your life, you create your future. This is Alicia Bowling with Beyond Logic.